Plants. The Green Frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before. All right, that was a little bit of beatboxing from Brad. I stuck it in there. He doesn't know it's there. So this is the Plant Mortality Vortex. It's a really good episode. We talk about the questions of what's wrong with my plant and how to fix them and how to take care of them. And today's episode is brought to us by the YouTube channel for Lawn Thumbs, lawnthumbs.com, youtube.com, Lawn Thumbs, /Lawn Thumbs. And Freddie is going to walk you through the ins and outs of a landscape / lawn maintenance care business. All the things you need to know and do to be a success in the world of lawn care. So check them out. I'll get you back to the episode. Here we go. Plant Mortality Vortex. Let's get it on. Cha-cha-cha. I'm Blaine.
And I'm B-Rad.
And we are the Horticult. Thank you for listening. And today, this episode, we're going to discuss the question, what is wrong with my plant? That seems to be like one of the biggest questions I see online. Is just, what is wrong? How do I make my plants happy? And I was thinking, why don't we just discuss the 5 possible issues? And if you can eliminate these, or if you can, eliminate these from a possible reason why. So fixing these issues, if there's still something wrong, then, sometimes you only get one shot with a plant. And then they can't ever recover.
They decline to the point of death.
Yes, they do. Slowly over years. And I remember in one of my classes, they were talking about a tree that was just, I had that same experience with one of my trees. It was a flowering cherry, Kwanzaa cherry, and just one spring, it was beautiful, and then it didn't make it to summer, and it had died. That was the one you cut out, remember? My other house.
Gigantic?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it just all of a sudden died. There was no sign. It was just, so something had happened that had stressed it, and it had just slowly declining. And I've actually heard of that happening where it's like, it's like, this is my last chance to reproduce. So I'm just going to push every last energy that I have, and hopefully my, genetic material will be passed on to the next generation.
So did you see a massive influx of yield in that tree?
It was a beautiful flowering tree that year, and I thought it was like, oh, all right, yeah, because it didn't look quite right the year before. Mm-hmm. And it is still a mystery to me why it happened. It did have a huge scorch that had healed over time. So I don't know if that's when it started to decline and it just was dealing with the scorch, winter scorch. Because a cherry, it has really thin layer of bark. So that could have been it. It suckered crazily. And I think my neighbor might have sprayed the suckers with some sort of chemical. Mm-hmm. So that could have been just to push it over the edge to kill it.
So there might be some signs that you can pay attention to that lead you to its overall decline. So like suckers and
right. See that? Yeah.
Massive amounts of flowers and or fruit. Those are 2 that just popped into my head. That It's like, okay, wait a second, something's not quite right.
Yeah.
Maybe leaf wilt, like heavy leaf wilt and damage in the cambium that way.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just like I really don't know, because it had a huge, caliper on it. It was big.
Oh yeah.
So I thought it was just totally healthy, and then it just gave up the ghost. So sometimes you just don't know. So
this is good. We've come up with this 5 items to really pay attention to when something does not seem quite right with your plant, tree, shrub.
So yeah, these 5 that I came up with, and I'm thinking about my plants that I've had that have died, and these are the reasons why I think, or maybe they're unhealthy for one of these reasons. And even if it's unhealthy, it might be able to overcome it, but sometimes it just can't. That was more of my point. So it's kind of out of your control sometimes, that you just can't, even though you check off all these things, you feed it a bunch of nutrients, you do all this stuff, everything as right as you can do it, you still can't save it. And that's just part of it. You can't keep everything alive. And that's okay. We learn from it, and we move forward. There was something, it was called like the death spiral. It's like it doesn't there's just something in the history of that life of the tree or shrub that it's just slowly declining over years and years and years, and then just dies. Was it mortality cycle or vortex? Mortality vortex.
The vortex.
Yes, I can't remember what it was. But anyway, here's my numero uno on the list, which I find that growers try to help you with this one. It's just sun exposure. So I read the label on the plant when you buy it. It'll give you a good idea of where to put it. So it's either getting too much sun or too little sun. And that kind of plays into I'm the next one. It also plays into the next one. But the difference between full part sun, part shade, and full shade. So that's the kind of variance of what we're dealing with. Obviously, full sun is going to be on the south side.
Mm-hmm. So, and maybe west side too.
And west side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just depends on. It'll say how many hours of full sun it can handle, or what it prefers. If it doesn't say an hour, then I figure it's okay to be on the south side.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get a good 8 hour. Well, can you get a good 8 hours on the west side?
In the middle of the summer, yeah.
Yeah. So anything more than 8 hours exposure, then you can put it on the south side. But I've messed that up a couple times because at my mom's house, I went through a weird phase in my mom's house. Okay, I planted a lot of stuff there.
It's good training grounds, right?
But I have a lot, yeah. So I messed it up there because the house was white, and I planted this garden next to a white fence on the west side. But there's only it was a triangle shape. The house was the tip of the triangle, and then the fence was the I don't know the terms of a triangle, square root of a hypotenuse, whatever. So the angles, you know what I mean? Triangle.
Oh yeah.
Fence
right.
is the bottom part of the triangle.
Okay, right.
The longest one. And the garden was next to the fence, so it was getting western exposure, and then it was reflecting that exposure from the house onto the garden and from the fence onto the garden. So it was like super, super intense.
So you have sun exposure, the amount of light, but then you have heat exposure, which is totally different.
Yeah, it was.
You're getting your garden plants were getting double the heat because of the wall right there.
And we lost a few. We lost a couple.
Oh man, I'd say.
Yeah, may they rest in compost pits. Just kidding. I don't even remember what I did with them. Chunked them. Woo!
Yeah.
But, yeah, I thought it was more of like a medium one, like a part sun, not necessarily a part shade, because of where it was, but yeah, I thought it was definitely more intense than I expected.
Yeah.
Um,
I've always been told that the eastern light here in the valley is you get really high intense light, but it's kind of like the cool light, because by the time the sun passes over your home, everything's in the shade in the afternoon, right?
Right.
When it's quite intense and hot. So you still get a really good duration of light intensity, but it's cool light.
yeah. So that would be your more part sun.
Yeah.
No, part shade. Part sage sun. Less intense sun. I don't know. I would say it would be probably the part, if it said part shade.
Yeah.
I would say that, because by midday it's shade.
Yep.
So the rest of the day after midday it's not going to get any sun. So on the east side. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So then on the south side is full sun, and then on the west side is part sun, because it's intenser. The sun that it gets is more intense, but it's not the full amount of sun that it will get. And then north, everything on the north side is not getting any sun. Well, shouldn't say
It's
any.
super
Depends on how
diffused.
close it is to the building.
Yeah.
So understanding that is a good starting point.
So sun exposure, that's number one, but also within the exposure range would be wind exposure, right?
Absolutely.
For sure, yeah. So pay attention to, obviously here in the valley, a lot of the storms we get come from the northwest. Yeah, that's not always. But I know that quite often there's wind tunnels that come from that direction. And so a plant that is planted, say, on the southeast side of your home is more likely to be protected. And east side for sure.
So to put up a wind barrier where your prevailing winds come in, you'd want to put it on more of the northeast?
Yes. Yeah. Some kind of a wind block. It could be a natural, shrubbery or trees, arborvitae, things like that would be a great wind block. But it helps with plants that are sensitive to a lot of wind movement. And in my experience, Japanese maple is one of those varieties that likes to be in kind of a quiet area where there's not a lot of wind. And so, yeah, wind breaks around that kind of a variety would be a really good idea. And then also if you live anywhere near the canyon, right? Any of these canyon openings.
It's just windy.
Yeah.
I mean...
Parley's, Big Cottonwood, Little Cottonwood, Provo, any of these areas along the Wasatch Front, you're going to have those morning winds and the evening winds almost without fail. And so with that, and you don't think about this, it's kind of a hassle for people, but it definitely will dry your plants out. So,
yeah.
Wind exposure.
Here where I am, the wind comes from the lake.
Oh.
So I think that is another factor, because of the change in temperatures and stuff that happen with the water. The land will heat up faster than the water, and all of our wind comes from the southwest.
Right.
I don't see it. Do you see it?
Talk loud.
Okay, so yeah, so that's where we would have to. That's mostly and really kind of know where the wind's coming from in your own area. So
yeah, what direction it's coming from. Put up brakes if you need to, if you're so inclined to, baby the
which
plants
kind
that
of
need
that leads us what you were saying, that drying it out. That's our next one, is water. So water.